So, my name is Corinne Flagg, and my presentation is about the lack of women in STEM. Now, just a little bit of background. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The motivation behind this topic is I personally know many women here at St. Ben's who are STEM majors, and it makes me really wonder, are they going to continue on into STEM career paths? And if all of them do, why is there such an underrepresentation of women in this field? There is an extreme amount of gender bias still in these fields. It's 2017, people, get it together. Data has shown that progress is slowly being made and that there is more female representation in these fields, but there is still a very large gender gap. So just a little bit of data to introduce the topic. This chart is showing women's employment in STEM occupations from 1970 to 2011. In 1970, women were even less present in STEM fields than they are now. This chart is broken down into sort of career paths within STEM, such as social scientists, mathematical workers, life and physical scientists, computer workers, and engineers. In 2011, women actually do make up the majority of social scientists at 61%, but in more of the mathy occupations, men dominate these fields, especially in engineers. Only 13% of all engineers are women, and 27% of all computer workers are women. This graph shows the median earnings broken down by age, sex, and race. All of these categories are based off of science and engineering graduates. It's just broken down by the total employed in the labor force and those who specifically went on to work in STEM fields. What the thing to focus on here is the sex category. So, out of all STEM graduates, total in the workforce, STEM related field or not, men on average are making $85,500 and women are making $58,800. Now, this isn't obviously all based on discrimination. Women tend to take lower paying jobs than men, so that could explain it. But within STEM related careers, men on average are making $91,000 a year compared to the $75,100 women are making. Now, despite different career paths and choices, this is still a obvious wage gap. This graph shows the age distribution of STEM workers from 1970 to 2011. Each different colored line represents a different year. So as you can see, in 1970, the majority of STEM workers were younger. What we see in 2011 is that there is a much more even age distribution from 25-year-olds to 50-year-olds, and then it really decreases. So the first piece of literature I read was Growing the Roots of STEM Majors, Female Math and Science High School Faculty and the Participation of Students in STEM. So this study examined the proportion of high school math and science teachers and whether that had an effect on students' choices to go into STEM-related fields in college. They found that the proportion of female faculty had absolutely no effect on males, but it did have a high impact on females, especially females with high math skills. And this implies that the pre-college years are very important in helping to either direct a girl towards a STEM major and also helping to break down those gender stereotypes within STEM majors. The next piece of literature I read was Navigating the Gendered Math Path, Understanding Women's Experiences in University Mathematics Classes. So this paper talks about the gendered math path, and typically in most colleges and universities, a lot of the math majors are men, and so it is considered a very male-dominated major. And simply by following various men and women through their math major, they found that women had lower self-perceptions of their ability to do math, Previous research has also concluded the same thing. And when discussing math applications, women had more self-doubt and were less assertive of their thoughts than the men were. The last piece of literature that I reviewed is called What's So Special About STEM? A comparison of women's retention in STEM and professional occupations. So this followed women from a survey done in 1979 through their careers, and it compared women in STEM occupations versus women in just professional occupations. So what they found was that the women in STEM careers were more likely to leave their careers than professionals, especially early on in their careers. Family factors, such as having children, are not a viable explanation for this difference, simply because not enough women had children and left the workforce for that reason to account for the greater loss in STEM occupations versus professional occupations. And finally, women in STEM fields reported lower job satisfaction and investment in their careers. So things such as ongoing training and rewards for great work, they didn't see that, and so that left more of them less satisfied with their jobs than professionals. So the connection to economic development. Obviously, we had a whole section on gender and work, and this topic directly applies to both gender and work. So what we can see is once women are working in STEM fields, there is a smaller wage gap, but it is still there, and it's there with even less female representation. So there isn't a huge sample of women to pull from to measure the wage gap, but we can still see that it's there with the smaller sample. Some of the improvements I made from my initial proposal: I added the article summaries. I didn't have them before, so no one had any idea what I was talking about. I also found relevant data from the Census Bureau. In my proposal, I based a lot of it off of data that we had in the class slides, but I actually found a very helpful publication from the Census Bureau where I got my nice charts from. Some ideas for future research. Something to look into would be determining at what point women are leaving STEM fields. Is it in high school? So are high school students thinking they want to go into STEM and then changing their minds before they get to college? Or is it once women are in college and going through the major, is that when they are choosing to leave? Or is it once they've been working in a STEM field or STEM related field for a few years, is that when they decide that they don't want to deal with it anymore? Another point I could go into is what non-STEM careers do some STEM majors end up in? So in one of the previous charts, it showed that there was a difference between earnings of just STEM majors and then STEM majors who ended up working in STEM. So what are those other careers that STEM majors end up working in if they're not in a STEM job? And then delving more specifically into STEM careers, what are the earnings gap in those specific careers? Like, is there a large earning gap within engineering, computer science, physicists, and those kinds of jobs?